Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this year's Christmas quilt. I know, it's hot outside. But we got to start our Christmas projects early, otherwise we don't get them done. And if we don't get them done for this year, it just means we're ahead for next year. Right? All right, so for this month, I have the new strip club quilt I've named Westward Leading. Now, do you have the song in your head? Yes. No? Well, I'm not going to sing it for you. Somebody once told me, I said I can't sing, and that person said, sure you can, just hit the notes. I thought I was. Okay, so today we start with 2.5-inch strips. How about that? In this quilt here, we also have additional fabrics. Accent in our quilt is black. We have a background we use for the blocks, and we have a background we use for the sashing. It is listed as a different background. Yours doesn't have to be different than your block background, but here, I don't know if you can see it, but we have a different background for our sashing. For our block background in this quilt, it's basically white on white. It's got little stars on it. You'll never see it from where you are, but I can, yeah. It's just white. Yeah, it's just white. In the sashing, we have little polka dots on white. So in our quilt here, the sashing is different than the block background. And the way the pattern is broken out, it gives you the different yardages if you want to do that also. And then in this quilt, we've also repeated that same sashing background for border 1. We went to a great gold for border 2 and then border 3. Here we have 2.5-inch strips. The pattern is written so you can either make your quilt scrappy or you can make it as a 2-color quilt. What you're looking at is a basic variation of a 2-color quilt. In this case, the colors are red and green. Sometimes we might use a dark fabric in place of one of those, just so we have partners of 2 colors, either a red and a green. So here in the star, your basic red and green. Now over here we have a green, but we've partnered it with a black. So we took some liberties in what that other color might be. But distinctly, there are 2 colors in this quilt. It would mean the quilt would be equally nice in, say, red and blue. So now what you'd have instead of a Christmas quilt, you'd have a patriotic star quilt. But again, the pattern is written so either 2 colors or scrappy. But if you want to do it in 2 colors, you're going to separate out your strips into color A and color B, color 1 and color 2. In our case, it'll be green and red. Once you have your strips, you want to pick 2 that have nice contrast. For example, these 2 have nice contrast and make a distinct star with 2 colors. And then you'll subcut those strips, those partners, one into a semi-long segment and then some other segments and then some squares, just like the pattern tells you. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. That's okay. The pattern is written for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sizes. In this case, this is the throw, which is 4 blocks. It's a lap. 3 blocks by 4. It's the lap size. In our sample today, I am using blue and pink as those 2 colors. So this quilt is going to have a little different look to it, basically a 2-color quilt in pink and blue. Here I've taken one segment. This, I don't know, the pattern will tell you how big to cut this segment. It's not half a strip, it's not a full strip, so pay attention to the sub-cutting of your strips. We're going to use the tube technique. Put the 2.5-inch strips together, so 1/4-inch seam along the top and along the bottom to make the tube. You put them right sides together. These are batik fabrics in our sample, so it doesn't matter. They're same on both sides. But if you're not using batiks, they're right sides together. You make this tube, and then you're going to use your strip tube ruler. And we're going to place the measurement on the bottom stitching line. The pattern will tell you which measurement. Bottom stitching line, cut up and down to cut out a triangle. Triangle looks a little bit like this. Pull the triangle away. Open it up. Wait. And get your half-square triangle block. Brilliant. And get your half-square triangle block. Brilliant. Thank you. Next time you cut will be off the top stitching line. And if you've seen our videos or you know our technique here, there's the $10 tip. I have yet to get the $10. Instead of putting the ruler up like this, you know you need to cut off of this top stitching line. It's an awkward cut, so now instead we're going to just flip the tube and we cut off that same stitching line, only now it's at the bottom and the ruler does not have to change positions. So we're going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, cut a bunch of triangles, half square triangles that look like this. We'll put 4 of them together, make a pinwheel like that. What we have here is the very center of our star block. The star block is essentially an elongated Lemoyne star, and so we have to create the points now. To do that, we are going to do a stitch and flip technique. Here we have one of the same fabrics as we have in our pinwheel that will create the points for the star. This is the pink one, and on top of it I have a square with a diagonal line drawn on the square. Don't use permanent marker when you do it. You want to use a faint line. Then you will stitch on that line. Place it as the picture shows. Very important to follow the picture because the next one will be different. And if you don't do it like the picture shows, you will have a different block. So here now we have stitched and we're going to flip this piece over to create our point like that. You want to be sure that the edges are flush, the bottom fabric underneath and the top fabric you just flipped over on the top edge and the right edge. Once you know that they are flush and you have a rectangle again, or still, you can trim away this excess fabric. If you want, if you dare, you can stitch a ½ inch away from this line and then cut between the two, and then you'll have an extra bonus tiny half square triangle. If you do a quilt out of those little triangles, please send me a picture. You'll have my undying admiration. All right, so we'll do one like this, and now in the other color, see how I say placement's very important? It's different. Same concept, but different placement. Flip over like that to get a piece that looks like this. So you can see the star points beginning to build. Yes? Yes. In fact, you will make identical pieces that will go like this. Yeah, it's easy, huh? Not so hard. And you know, like with most everything with quilting, it's just squares and rectangles that we put together. I love my job because I get to show you how it breaks down and how it's very easy when it comes together. Because something may look pretty complicated, but as you break it down, it's just squares, some diagonal piecing. It's all very easy. Now the only thing we need to do is create these half square triangles that go in the corners. So in this sample that I'm showing you, the blue and the pink would come from your strip set. This wonderful cream fabric is your block background, and then this purple is the accent. So to create this half square triangle block, we'll use the same tube technique, only different sizes. Here we have 2 segments sewn together. These are wider than the 2½ inch strips, so follow the pattern for the instructions. You got the cream, you have the accent, right sides together. Stitch a 1/4 inch seam up along the top and the bottom. Take your strip tube ruler, place the measurement on the bottom stitching line, up and down. Cut out a triangle that looks like this. Pull it away from your tube, and you open it up to get your half square triangle block. Brilliant. Okay, that was my fault. I didn't give you enough notice. Okay, so you make a bunch like this. When you have your components together, this is what your block looks like. But that's not all there is to the quilt. There's also sashing. Let's do sashing next. Look, by the magic of television, Isn't it pretty? Okay. Now sashing. I'm going to show you what the sashing looks like when it's completed, and then I'll tell you the components and how they come together. There are, well, I'll tell you the main sashing. This is the main sashing. See how it will go like this? And remember, oh, well, we haven't done that yet. We'll do that in a second. So for the sashing, the accent creates a triangle here in the center, the one that points down, and a triangle that points up. You have, from your print strips, a triangle on the corner here and a triangle there. And that is your main sashing. To do this, it's the same stitch and flip technique. Stitch and flip, this time the accent on the sashing background. Flip it over to create a piece like this. And you'll need another one that matches to go like this. Okay, so those two pieces, let me flip them around so that you can see. Okay, so now you see half of the sashing block. On some, you will add another triangle to get this look. Triangle to get this look. So you can see you need two of these mirrored to create the sashing with the triangles on them. Once you have your main sashing, you will need your cornerstone. Cornerstone is very similar to the center of your star. It's just a pinwheel. The only difference is it's print and background. Okay, so you see it all, how it all comes together now? Yeah. Let's look at the quilt. We have the block. We have the sashing. The sashing has a little triangle here that matches up with the pinwheel to create a larger floating pinwheel effect. And then we have the same triangle here that matches up with this cornerstone. If you're doing a two-color quilt, pay attention to the placement of those colors, because here the red hits a red color so that the pinwheel extends and they have matching colors. You don't have to worry so much about it. It can be scrappy. But if you want that effect of these two being red and these two being green, just pay attention to where you place it. The pattern will tell you where to do it. So we have the main block, we have the main sashing, we have the cornerstones. You may not see it, but if you'll notice, the main or the sashing pieces that hit the borders do not have a little triangle on them. So you have to pay attention. The pattern will tell you there's a main sashing, there's a sashing A and a sashing B. Main sashing. Can you see the difference in those? Main sashing, it's got print triangles on either side that will complete the pinwheels when it hits the cornerstone. Now this one, this will go on the left side of the quilt. This will hit a cornerstone to complete the cornerstone design. This will hit a border. If you kept a triangle there, it would look like a little lost triangle. Then this one will go on the right side of the quilt. This edge will hit the border, and that little triangle will hit the cornerstone to create the pinwheel effect. Pattern will tell you all of it, but it gives a nice effect of these pinwheels just here in the center. Otherwise, you would have loose triangles sort of floating around the edges. So pay attention to that. Nothing's hard. It's all half square triangles, strips, little flip and stitch. When you have your arrangement together that you like, you will sew your blocks together by rows, block, sashing, block, and then your next row will be the sashing, cornerstone, sashing, cornerstone, sashing. In our quilt, as I mentioned, we opted for border 1 to be the same color as our sashing. And then we got this wonderful gold to pull out, nice little border, and then this terrific focus fabric for the outer border. It just needed to go back to black for the binding, don't you think?
Yeah.
So that's the quilt. Is it good?
Good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Back. Back. Oh, you want to see the back of the quilt? Isn't it great? These are little Christmas trees, little black Christmas trees on white fabric. It was just such a nice complement to what was going on the front of the quilt. I like it. I have a thing for Christmas quilts. Like, how many Christmas quilts do you need? I don't know. I just keep making them. Would you like to see another colorway?
Oh, yes.
Will you hand me that quilt over there? My arms aren't long enough. Thank you. Okay. Oh, I would tell you something else. In this sample, I told you that this block background is cream. Well, we use the same background for the sashing background in this, on our teaching sample there. Okay. Now this is different, distinctly different. And this is if you want to make it all scrappy. The fabric collection is my Soleil collection with Tonga, with Timeless Treasures. Oops. Oh. Pretend I'm to wait. Hold on. Let's go this way. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you get up? Okay. Looks totally different, doesn't it? Okay, so clearly they're different fabrics, but another one of the main differences in here, the pinwheel that creates the star is completely scrappy. So you don't have that distinct two-color star. And when I say scrappy too, I mean that there's no distinct yellow and blue. There kind of is, but just for contrast. And then the background fabric is a cream, and notice the sashing is much different. So it gives a completely different effect. Can you believe it's the same quilt? It's pretty, huh? Yeah.
It's very pretty.
Let's show them the backing too. They always want to see the back. What do we choose for the back? You put so much effort into the front. It's nice to have good fabric on the back.
Yeah, very nice.
So this is Westward Leading in two very different colorways. Does not have to be Christmas. Very good. We have any questions on the quilt? On the project? On the pattern? On life in general? Yes, ma'am.
When you do use the strip tube ruler on it, do you recommend that we make fresh cuts each time?
This is a plant, isn't it? She's helping me out. So the question was, do you make fresh cuts when you use the strip tube ruler? Yes, thank you. You always make fresh cuts because you want your second block to be accurate based on the seam, not based on the first block. So here we have a tube, strip tube ruler, place the measurement, bottom stitching line, we cut up and down. This cut is the same angle as your next cut. But don't base your next cut off of your first cut. Make clean cuts. That way the accuracy will be based on this stitch here, not on your last cut. That way you won't keep making, perpetuating that first angle, which may or may not be correct. So fresh cuts. Thank you for the question. Oh, a follow-up.
Oh, another one. When you do the strip with the one that you do, and you said you could do an extra line and have another triangle, I have trouble so that when I flip it up, it doesn't really make a full, it's a little short. Is there a remedy for that?
So let me see if I understand the question. We're talking about
Yes, that's.
I'll try to find a. Are you laughing at me? Okay. So here we have a square on a segment. And so if I understand the question, when you flip it over, it may not go quite to the edge. And the reason I have you test that it goes to the edge is that is a distinct possibility when you're sewing. and you don't want to cut before you know it does or does not go and find out later that it doesn't go. So the trick is you actually stitch a thread inside that line, so towards the point where you're going to fold, because as you fold, both the fabric and the thread eats up some of the extra fabric and may not quite make it. So you stitch a thread inside the line you drew and then test it.
Inside or outside?
In, towards the point.
Towards, oh, that's
Yeah,
your inside.
this is the inside, so towards the point. And then test it, and then adjust from there. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you for not asking life questions. Not prepared to answer those today. Well, if there's no other questions, how about we call it a day and then do it again next month for another pattern that uses 2.5-inch strips?
Super.
Woohoo!